With the Premier League season just around the corner, I'm going to go through my Premier League predictions for the 2023-2024 season. So if I'm honest, be prepared for a bit of a shit show of some predictions, because I'm going to get a lot of these wrong and you will probably disagree with quite a few of these that I have. So getting straight into it, in 20th place I have Luton Town, and I just don't really think that they've brought in enough players to survive in the Premier League. Plus I do think that their squad is quite weak as a Premier League squad, so that's why I have them in last place. Then in 19th place I have Sheffield United, and here it's really the same as Luton, to be honest. I don't think their squad is strong enough to be in the Premier League. I do think it's quite a weak Premier League squad, plus they haven't really brought anyone in. So really it's the same as Luton. So Sheffield United in 19th. Then in 18th place, the third relegation spot is probably one that people disagree with me on. I have Everton. And Everton did struggle last season, plus they've lost a few players, and the players that they've really bought in I don't think will help keep them up. Plus they haven't really bought too many players in anyway. So yeah, Everton having, for me, the last relegation spot. Then in 17th I have Burnley. So just about surviving. I think Burnley have a decent squad for the Premier League, so they have a good chance of surviving. Plus they have brought in a few pretty decent players, so I think they are giving themselves the best chance they have of surviving in the Premier League. They might go down. I do think it will be quite close between Everton and Burnley in the relegation part. So yep, Burnley in 17th. Then in 16th place, this is probably going to be a surprise, I have Fulham. So I think they've made a couple of decent transfers, but then again they have lost quite a few players as well, and I think that losing one of their main players as well will impact them. So I think Fulham will struggle this season. They might be dragged into a relegation battle, they might not, but yeah, Fulham in 16th. Then in 15th place I have Nottingham Forest, who once again have done some decent transfers, but they haven't done many, plus the transfers that they have done haven't really been anything that will be game changing, so I don't think that they'll finish that high. And then in 14th place I have Crystal Palace, who haven't really done much haven't really done anything in the transfer window. Plus they haven't lost too many players, but they have lost Wilfried Zaha, basically their main player. So I think that will affect them, but I don't think it will be enough for them to be dragged into a serious relegation battle. And I do think they do have a good squad, it's just not one of those like mid-table top tier squads. So I do think that they will survive comfortably, and I think they'll have a bit of a drop-off season. Then in 13th place I have Wolverhampton Wanderers, and a lot of people think that Wolves they'll be in a relegation battle. However, even though they have lost a couple of big players, I do think that they have made a really big transfer for themselves, where they brought in a striker or someone to play up front. Plus they have brought in a couple of other good players, but I think the main thing Wolves have been missing is that striker, and I think now that they've brought in a striker, it will really kind of elevate the team, and I think it will really help them. So yeah, I have Wolves in 13th. And then in 12th place I have Bournemouth. They have done quite a bit of buying in the transfer window, and I think that they've brought in some pretty good players. They've brought in some young players as well. They've also lost a few players, but I don't think it's that detrimental to them. And the players they've brought in seem like pretty good players, so I think Bournemouth will do quite well this season. Then in 11th place I have West Ham United, and the problem I have with West Ham is they've lost their main player in Declan Rice, but they just haven't done anything really in the transfer window. So I do think they will drop off a bit this season, but I don't think it will be that dramatic of a drop off, because their squad is still a good squad. It's just when you lose your main player and your captain, usually that has a bit of an effect on the team as a whole. So I do think that they could have a bad start to the season, but then they kind of make a bit of a comeback and move up a few places during the end of the season. So then in 10th place, I have Brentford, who have made some good signings, and they haven't really lost that many. Well, they haven't really lost anyone that significant, and they've made a few good signings. So really with Brentford, not really too much to say. I've kind of put them in 10th because it's one of those things that's kind of where they ended up. I didn't think they were great enough to move up, or I didn't think they were dreadful enough to specifically move down. So then in 9th place, I have Brighton and Hove Albion, who have made a few good signings, considering that they've lost Alexis McAllister, one of their main players. I do think that they've made a few good signings, one of them from the Premier League, and a couple of interesting free transfers that I think could work out quite well for them. So Brighton I have in 9th, even though that's around about where they finished last year. I just think that the teams above Brighton are just that much better. I don't think that there's really much Brighton could have done to finish any higher. So in 8th place, this is probably going to be a surprise, I have Aston Villa, and even though they haven't really lost anyone and they've gained quite a lot of these players aren't really proven in the Premier League except from Tielemans. So I do think that Aston Villa could finish higher, but I'm putting them in 8th because the teams above them I just think either have a better squad or they're just more proven in the Premier League. So then in 7th place, this is going to be a surprise for some people probably, I have Chelsea, and they have lost a lot of their players, which I'm not surprised. I thought Chelsea were going to have a big clean out this season, and they've brought in some interesting players, especially Nkunku, who was the main player. However, I just don't think that their squads kind of match the teams above them, but I don't think they have the experience to go really a lot further in the Premier League, if that makes any sense. Like, the squads above them have a lot of experience in the Premier League and they haven't lost too many of their players. And I think that Chelsea have had such a big turnover in their squad this season. It's just, I think that will affect them a bit. So that's why I have them quite a bit lower. So then in 6th place, I have Tottenham Hotspur. So with Tottenham, once again, they've made a few kind of big signings, and they haven't really lost anyone. It's just they've lost Harry Winks and Lucas Moura, who weren't really starting that much, to be honest. So I don't think that these transfers yet are enough to really elevate them to getting like a big push towards a Champions League place. They could in a couple of years' time, but I just don't think that their transfers that they've brought in have really elevated them above anyone else. So that's why I have Tottenham in 6th place. And then in 5th place, I have Newcastle United, who've made a couple of very big signings. They've also lost a couple of players, but I think the signings they've brought in are better than the players they've lost. But once again, I just don't think these players at the moment can elevate Newcastle to that next level. So I do think that they will finish like a place or two below where they finished last season, but I don't think they've necessarily got worse. It's just that the teams above them have got better, or their squads are just better. So moving into the Champions League places, in 4th place I have Manchester United, and it's really a similar kind of reason. They've brought in a couple of big players, and I do think that these players could elevate Man United to be better, but I just think that the teams above them have better squads. That's just literally how simple it is. Mason Mount and Onana are very good signings. It's just how long will they take to settle in? That's really the big question. Man United could finish higher. They could finish in, I wouldn't be surprised if Man United finished in 3rd place, but I've put them in 4th because I'm not entirely sure about how the squad will gel, especially after losing David De Gea and bringing in a new goalkeeper when De Gea's been there for as long as he has. So in 3rd place, I have Arsenal, and even though they've brought in Declan Rice, I do think Havertz and Timber are just as good as they're hyped up to be, but the one thing is, I just don't think Declan Rice is that great, and I do think they did overpay for him. So if Declan Rice doesn't fit in, then Arsenal could have a bit of a down season, but I do think he will fit in at Arsenal. It might take a bit of time, but I don't think Arsenal will have as good of a season as they had last season, because there's going to be a lot of expectation and a lot of hype behind that. So with Arsenal, I do think they might drop off a bit, but it won't be like a significant drop off because their squad is actually very, very good. They have a very good squad, and if they do have a setback at the start of the season, I do think they will bounce back. So then in second place, this is probably going to be a bit of a surprise. I have Liverpool, and considering the amount of players that they've lost and the amount of kind of core players they've lost, I do think that the transfers they've made are actually very, very good transfers. I think players will start to fit in quite quickly. Jurgen Klopp just has a knack of bringing in players, especially foreign players, and really helping them gel with the team quite quickly. And I do think that these players will gel quite quickly, especially Alexis Mac Allister having played in the Premier League. So I think Liverpool will finish second, and then obviously that leaves one team at the top, and it's Man City. Okay, I have Manchester City winning the Premier League. They've just come off a treble. They haven't really lost too many players. They've lost Gundogan, Mendy and Riyad Mahrez. They've only really bought in Kovacic. Cancelo's come back off loan. I don't know if they're going to sell him or not, but they're the treble winners. They don't really need to improve their squad. They've got the best squad in the Premier League by a mile, if I'm honest. So I do think Man City will win. I apologise for this being a really, really obvious pick and not really having that shocking first place, but I can't really see anyone else toppling Man City, especially after last season. So there you have it. They are my predictions for the Premier League season. Let me know down in the comments what your predictions are. Feel free to point out where I'm completely wrong, where I'm being an idiot, or where I'm underrating a team, where I'm overrating a team. Leave all that down in the comments. If you like my predictions, leave a like on the video. That would help me know that you actually think I've made some decent predictions once, because with predictions usually I go not over the top, but I like to make the unpredictable prediction. I don't like saying or doing like what everyone else thinks. So let me know how I did down in the comments. Please try not to be too brutal. I'm not the best with predictions, to be honest, but yeah. So thank you for listening to the video, and hopefully I will see you in the next video when the Premier League season will most likely have started.